The difference between lamb and mutton is, first of all, spelling. Secondly, it's a perhaps somewhat arbitrary break between two qualities or designations of lamb and, let's just say of sheep meat. So an animal is a lamb until it reaches 14 months of age. After 14 months of age, it becomes a mutton. And you would say, well, how would someone know how old they are? Do they have birth certificates? No, really, they don't. How we determine lamb from mutton in the processing phase of breaking down the animal carcass, from slaughtering a live animal to packaging the meat and sending it out to the customer. One of the things that's done is the removal of the feet. And so a cut is made, and this joint, we might think of it as our wrist, is sort of split open. If this forms what we call a spool joint, that is a characteristic of an older animal where the bone has matured to the point it has completely ossified and hardened. If you look carefully at that bone, just below the spool joint is a suture line in the bone. On the end of this bone is a spool joint. You'll see that it looks somewhat like, I'm going to use your imagination, it looks somewhat like a spool of thread, or a spool that thread would come on. And just below the spool, you see the suture line here. This bone has some porosity just below the spool. The spool is actually quite hard and fairly durable because that's a joint of movement. But the suture line runs all the way around, and all that porosity actually is because this is an area with very active blood flow during the developmental phase of the lamb, because it's moving toward creating this harder end to the bone where impact occurs. If it were under 14 months of age, and we bent this over and made our cut, instead of separating at the end of the ossified complete bone, it would separate at this suture line, and the spool portion would go with the foot, and there would be kind of a rough edged break in the end of the bone because the bone had not quite finished hardening off or ossifying. So that's the difference. In terms of flavor, I would say that in general, lamb flavor is mild. And if you can think of flavor as maybe having a volume knob, mutton is cranking that knob all the way over and blasting that flavor out into your experience. So personally, I prefer mutton. I love mutton. We don't sell as much mutton in part because we eat a lot of it, but also because we mostly are shooting for slaughtering year-old lambs.